Hello, I'm Bill Paxton, Mayor of the City of Paducah, and I'm here today to talk to you about quality of life matters in Paducah-McCracken County. As I've told you over the past years, quality of life can be many things. It can be good roads, it can be a good police department, skateboard park, greenway trail, all the things that make Paducah a place that you want to live, work, and raise your family. So today we have an interesting subject in our Paducah Symphony. And we have with us today John Williams, who is chairman of the board of the Paducah Symphony. And we have Daniel Sene, our new executive director of the Paducah Symphony. Welcome, men. It's good to have you all with us here.
Good to be here.
It's good to be here.
And we're going to talk a little bit about our Paducah Symphony. And John, I'm going to start with you. Just tell me quickly a little bit about the symphony history and how and why it got started here in Paducah.
The Paducah Symphony was started in 1979, back when we had the summer festival, and it was basically put together by some founding fathers and mothers to perform for the summer festival. But from that point forward, they were so excited about the first performance, they forwarded and they would put it together one concert at a time. That lasted for a short period, and then they started to put together actual symphony performances. We performed in Jeton for many years. Then as the city schools sold that building, we moved to Tillman, and starting in 2004, we got to occupy the Four River Center. So over that time, it's been a development of artistic directors, executive directors, and musicians. Today, we have a large roster of musicians that we pull together from a large area, and only a few of those are actually local in order to put the entire complement on stage. But it's been a good 32 years of expansion.
Great. Well, Daniel, welcome to Paducah. It's
Thank
good
you.
to have you here. And tell us a little bit about what you think of Paducah, and then what impresses you about our symphony orchestra.
Well, Paducah is just kind of a unique town. I think when I first came and visited, I actually had heard of it before I came here, partially because the artist relocation program and also the Carson Center. I'd heard some things about the Carson Center coming from the orchestra I was at previously. So I kind of knew a little bit about this unique community here, and when I came here, I was just impressed by the people, of course, and then someone took me on a drive downtown, and it's just it has a great feel to it, and it's a real unique city and has a lot of things to offer for families and for single people, and it just seems like it's a great draw in the community. And as far as the orchestra is concerned, I was really impressed when I met Raffaele Ponti, our artistic director, and spoke with him quite at length throughout the interview process, and he and I got along quite well, and yet that relationship is furthered since I've now met him in person, and we worked on a couple concerts here on the ground here. But it's a unique orchestra in that there's not a lot of communities that start an orchestra with an outside musician force and really pull in from several different communities. And so it takes a lot of coordination, a lot of effort, and that challenge was appealing to me moving here. And it seemed like there's a spirit of determination that existed and still exists on the part of this board, and the more I live here, it seems like it's a part of this community too. So it really makes it special.
Well, having Raffaele here and a great job that he's doing, and then having you come right behind him as executive director makes for a wonderful partnership. And both of you are from outside this area, and you're bringing new ideas to the symphony. What are some of the exciting things that you all are working on this year?
Well, we already have 2 concerts underneath our belt so far, and if there's any indication of what we're hearing is that people are really excited about the rest of the season based off of those two experiences alone. The orchestra sounds phenomenal right now, and I don't have a base point from how they sounded last year, but from what I'm hearing and gauging those experiences from our patrons, audience members, and even the orchestra members themselves, they really are coming together and playing much better than they have before. And I don't know if that's because they're happier, or if I'm pretty sure Raffaele's influence in rehearsal and how he's able to pull things together is making them play at a higher level, better ensemble.
Yeah, I would add the other element there is the programming. I mean, the maestro and a committee worked very hard to make this year a year where the programming is all very approachable. We haven't necessarily heard of every piece, but every piece is exciting and something you're going to leave the building saying, I really enjoyed that, I really want to go again. Symphony music, it's such a broad spectrum. At times we find ourselves wanting to do something different all the time. This year we're trying to make it things that are all exciting and highly entertaining. And I think that's coming through in the first two concerts.
I think you're right, John. We have been to several of the performances, and they just seem like they're more entertaining, more exciting. The guest musicians that are coming are wonderful. John, along that same line, what is, in your opinion, what is the mission of the Paducah Symphony?
I think it's pretty straightforward. It's to bring great music to this region. If we lived in New York City or Chicago or San Francisco, we would expect to have this type of asset. But what the Paducah Symphony is looking to do is to make the Paducah imprint, our regional arts community, as full as possible by bringing great music, period. And we're talking about main stage productions, but that also means things like educational programming in our schools and other opportunities around town to hear this type of music.
Would you agree with that, Daniel?
Oh, absolutely. That's again, it goes back to the uniqueness of this community and being able to provide that level of programming and also educational outreach too.
Well, I had Raffaele here as my guest when he first got to town, and he did a terrific job. So, Daniel, tell us about the musicians in the symphony. Where are they from? Why do they play? Why do they want to perform?
They're John can help on this one too. They're literally from like this 5-state region. I mean, which is impressive to me. Just that we're polling. Some of them drive 3, and I think even one person even drives 4 hours to come here and play for the Paducah Symphony. And a lot of them, they're playing for other orchestras, and they have their own professional careers, and so they're living elsewhere, trying to make a living, and they're doing the same type of thing. They have a base somewhere, whether it's Nashville or St. Louis or Louisville or some other communities that they're pulling from. We share a lot of musicians with other orchestras, and so it's really unique. And I think one of the things that I'm always surprised is that folks don't necessarily know that we actually pay our musicians, that they are professional musicians, and that's what our commitment is, to be able to have a really good, solid, well-sounding orchestra. You've got to be able to pay for that type of talent most of the time. I mean, sometimes, you can get away with volunteer service, but we're past that, definitely past that. And I don't know how the history evolved in that particular realm.
I do have a couple points. I believe I'm right. About 20% of them are from the immediate region. A lot of them teach in our schools or at Murray State or Southern Illinois or Southeast Missouri. So we do have a small core, but the rest of it, to flesh out a full romance orchestra where you've got more than 70 people on the stage, we've got to draw in from as many as Memphis, Louisville, so forth. But the other point I would like to make is, you ask why. We do pay these musicians. but I can tell you it's a very modest pay rate. The reason they're here is not for the paycheck. It simply would not, it's not, the math doesn't work out. The reason these people are playing is for the opportunity to play in an orchestra of this type in a facility like the Carson Center. If you are a bassoonist or trumpet player and accomplished, you can sit at home, but it's no fun just to go play the scales at home. You want to play with an orchestra, and you want to play with the nicest quality orchestra you can. Well, if you just sit and think about it, especially in our region of the country, there's not that many opportunities to do so. There's even fewer opportunities to do so in a place like the Carson Center. You know, we used to play in the end of a high school building that was no longer in use. It's true.
I know.
And that's where a lot of our sister orchestras are in high school gymnasiums, or, you know, they're in that sort of setting. But we have a professional orchestra with an artistic director that we bring from upstate New York. We have a professional manager like Daniel, and we perform on that stage. So the reason they're here is for the total experience of playing with the Paducah Symphony.
And in order to pay these musicians, you have to have good crowds at your performances, but you have to have fundraisers. It's hard work, and in order to have a successful symphony, you've got to have the public out there supporting.
Oh, absolutely. The ticket price to our performances covers less than a third of the cost of what we're doing. So, and we compare that nationally with others so that we make sure our tickets are affordable for our local market and so forth. But we have to raise money from other directions, or we would never be able to do this.
Right, right. Well, Daniel, tell us some of the goals that you have for the symphony. Where do you want this to go in the future?
I'm not sure your program's long enough. But, no, I mean, actually, if you had Raffaele here, with the three of us together could definitely flush out those till way into the evening. You know, there's a lot of, Raffaele sees a lot of potential here, and obviously he's flushed out some of that already. And some of the things that we're looking to do while we're here is, you know, from a financial standpoint, the orchestra has a very, very modest endowment. I'd call it like a large savings account, really. And so that's, you know, that's an opportunity for us to really connect with our community and help them, bring them along to an understanding that a great orchestra needs a good funding base. Mm-hmm. And so there's some opportunity on the financial end of things, but there's also, you know, we're looking at being that regional orchestra that not just has our main performances at the Carson Center. We've got 7 of them this season, and I think that's great. Maybe we'll add 1 or 2 down the line, or depends on how that funding source works. But also, Raffaele and I would really like to see us reaching out more beyond the concert hall, and we have some great educational activities right now that we're involved in. And several of our board members have been involved in helping those come to see those through. We have our Young Artist Competition, which get scholarships, a couple winners every year, a piano division winner, and then also a non-piano instrumentalist division winner. And they perform, that was started several years ago, and I'm pleased to see that continuing. That's a real strong focus of the orchestra. And this year we're starting a string orchestra. One of the board members and also our principal violist, Patty Story, is actually tonight having a meeting with parents who are interested in that, and also the orchestra will start. And it will hopefully, that program, our goal for that program is to have it become a full-fledged youth orchestra. But right now we're starting with strings and keeping that as manageable as possible. One of the things we hadn't mentioned yet is the choral programs that are connected with the orchestra. That is extremely rare for an orchestra like this. There's very, very few orchestras that have such a large, thriving choral program, not just for adults, but for children too. It's extremely unique. And one of the things that we're trying to do, and Brad Almquist, our choral director, wants to do, is grow that program. And he does some other standalone performances, but also this year they're, of course, performing the Christmas concert, and then also at the end of the year they're doing some opera music with the orchestra, but also some other standalone programs. This Made in America thing that they do in January will be a standalone concert, and then the children perform other opportunities as well. And one of the things that we want to do to grow participation in that is, of course, keep it the fees modest enough so that parents can, with multiple children, can be able to have their children have access to that. And that extends to the same thing with our youth orchestra and getting those programs started. One of the things that's also cool that I think it's all board driven, I mean, these things that our board members say, we really ought to be doing this and reaching out into the community, is we have this musical chairs program where we invite students to come and sit alongside the orchestra during a rehearsal. And they actually get to, the orchestra member shows them a little bit about their instrument, and they help, turning pages where they're at in the music. It's a great experience for kids who maybe have little or no instrument experience to see that. And we're connecting with a lot of people there. And then another educational thing that we're doing is called a musical story time. And this year, it's based off of Mozart's sister, Nannerl. And they go into a school or even in the library, and they'll flush out this program using, connecting with a book, and also leaving some materials behind and getting kids engaged in that whole process. And
now what's the number? How many kids is that reaching?
Oh gosh, it's we're into a few thousand now.
Yeah,
already.
It's over 3,000 kids will see that program this year.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Well, already I think it's going to double by the time we even get through this, about the season.
Well, obviously, John is chairman of the board, and I think you've been on the board for a long time, been chairman maybe before. How important is it that you and Daniel and Raphael are on the same page in helping create programs and helping making the symphony a success?
Well, I mean, obviously it's critical, but what I would observe is that ultimately the symphony, like our other sisters in the arts community, is this big cooperative effort of a large number of people. And if the administration and the artistic and the funding mechanism are not on the same page, it simply doesn't pan out. What I've seen really since this summer with Daniel's hiring and a refocus. This is Raffaele's. Last year was his first season with us, but this is the first season we've been through a whole planning cycle with him, obviously. It's all of the things that sit, when you're having a conversation, you say, I really would like it if we could, and you fill in the blank. I really feel like we're in our first season in several where we are doing those things. We are adding, like the program that Daniel just mentioned, and master classes with our guest artists. There are so many extras that we're adding on in addition to just the main stage performance, that really having some exciting and some dynamic people like Raphael and Daniel is why it happens. If we were simply looking at how did we do it last year, we would never do those things. So it's a pretty exciting expansion from just a board perspective. It also means we're touching more lives, but it also means that we're in conversation with more people about being subscribers to the orchestra or contributing to the orchestra or sponsoring. I've really seen an explosion in the last year on businesses and other types of sponsors who want to be associated with the orchestra, and we find places that match their needs or the profile that they want in all of these different things. If all we're doing is a single type of program, then you run that gauntlet pretty fast.
Sure. Well, that's interesting, John. And Daniel, where do you see the symphony in the next 3 to 4 to 5 years? Where are we going?
I mentioned the things about like our youth string orchestra and opportunities like that. I really think that my my hiring is based off of basically making sure that the right players in the right spot. And our board, as active as they are, and they're all working hard in their own little pockets, I'd like to be able to make sure that our board is steered in a direction to where they won't have to necessarily do all that, the same thing 5 years from now, that they're growing as a board and being able to recognize and find those opportunities where we can have a much more connected organization in the community and also in the region. You know, the questions that I ask are, well, what if we start this youth orchestra thing, and which we are, of course, but what if, what does that mean as far as the availability of teachers in this area? You know, if there are more students that are playing for this, and they've got to find teachers. So I think, well, why couldn't we have some wild, audacious dream of starting a music school right here in Paducah? Being able to, that would also, of course, be a feeder to our orchestras too, but also would bring in musicians or augment current musicians that are living in the area, maybe even attract them to move here, taking that whole lower town type of,
Sure.
of experiment and
Sure.
you know, putting it into a practical music application, and being able to be more of an economic driver in the community than what we are already.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's plenty of opportunities, and trying to refocus our board to developing policies that are strong and solid in place, so that they don't have to worry about all those day-to-day things. That you know, we have professional staff, we can handle those things, but what are the things that they want to do as a board member, and raising the profile of the organization, and reaching out into other communities and finding new opportunities for us to explore. I mean, already we're talking about some opportunities of taking the orchestra to another community to perform, like the Sunday afternoon. You know,
you've done that once,
Yes.
like in Murray.
We've done it in,
Yeah.
just not consistently, and part of that's relationship building with where all that would go, but it can go a lot further than we've gone before.
Now, I knew there was a reason I liked you, Daniel. When you start talking about that school, that creates a lot of excitement, and that would go perfect with our art school,
With everything.
with everything that's going on, becoming a cultural community. So I like that.
See, that's really the maturing of the organization. If we were to go back 15 years, we would find the board actually cleaning the bathrooms before a performance.
Right.
I'm
Setting up chairs.
I'm sincere. Absolutely. That's what we had to do to have a symphony orchestra. But as funding and everything expands, as our base of musicians and the quality of musicians improves over time, we get to the point to where we can focus on these types of things, and that's where we are.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you asked to dovetail on that question too. The next 3 to 5 years, obviously, I don't want to have to worry about sellout performances at the Carson Center.
Yeah.
And I think that we can get there quite easily, and tell our story more. I mean, one of the things that we'll probably do is exploring bringing those ticket prices down, so we have some more affordability, and getting more families there on a more frequent basis. And obviously that's one immediate goal, but the next 3 to 5 years, there's opportunities that exist. They're flying all around us.
Got time for 2 quick questions. Real quick, John, what are some of our challenges? We know financially, the finances are a challenge. Real quick, what are some of the other challenges?
I would say that is the challenge. Our funding sources, like I mentioned, less than a third of the cost of running the symphony is the ticket price. So we have to come up with that other 2/3, and we have various mechanisms that we've used over the years that work very well. But when it comes down to it, I think that part of our challenge is to come up with a signature fundraising effort that works within the community, is respectful to all of our fellow organizations. Paducah has a very vibrant arts community, and if you look in the back of all those programs, you see all the names of the folks who are funding it, but we need to make sure that the symphony has its spot and that is in place and doesn't take quite as much detail work every year. And that comes with
Sure.
something exciting on the
Sure,
stage.
exactly. Daniel, tell me about your family real quick. Your wife and family are moving here. Tell me a little bit about them.
Well, yeah, I mean, my boys are 12 and 15, and they're in Idaho Falls still, so we haven't determined exactly how all of that's going to play out just yet. But my wife Brenda is a United Methodist minister, and she's serving a church in Idaho Falls right now. So, we're not sure how all that's going to play out just yet. So.
Yeah. Well, we're excited about seeing them in Paducah. I've not met your wife or your two boys, so look forward to that happening. But this has been a little bit of information about our Paducah Symphony. We have Daniel, who's a great executive director and is going to do great things with Raffaele, and then we have volunteers like John Williams, who is working as chairman of the board. So Paducah, McCracken County is definitely involved in quality of life issues. We'll continue to be involved, and I hope you will tune in next time for Quality of Life Matters in Paducah, Kentucky. Thank you all.